Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on the future of payments. My name is Aser Blanco. I lead the Americas at Google Cloud Financial Services. And the goal today is to talk about this exciting space that is the payments world. Before we go there, allow me for 1 second to talk about why we're here today. Everybody knows Google. Everybody knows that that's the company that is trying to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And I think they're doing a great job about that. So what is the role for Google Cloud? Why we're here today? And our goal as Google Cloud is to be able to be the accelerant, the company that works with industry leading companies and helps accelerate their digital transformation, a transformation that is meant to help them reimagine their businesses, and with data as a core element of that transformation. So if we talk about payments, and you will see actually that I have a lot of passion about this space, it is such a great story. Over the last 40 years, you go back to the 80s where cash was still prevalent and we're using, old ways of moving money from one place to other. And you fast forward to today, right? A lot of secular trends are helping payments become an incredible fast growth vertical, right? We have the emergence of always-on networks, the emergence, of course, of e-commerce. We're going to talk a little more about that in a second, right? Smartphones appearing and always being connected, real-time payments, contactless payments. In fact, it's being one after each other, right? The next innovation, the next thing. So between all these things, and one of the questions I get all the time is, hey, what is going to happen now that everybody's getting vaccinated? We're going back to normal. Are we going to go back to the pre-pandemic things? And I love to show this chart that shows you all the growth in e-commerce over the last 14 years, more or less. And you see that massive spike in 2020, and you don't see that as slowing down in any way. So basically what we're doing is we're fast forwarding into the future, but several years. But that trend, the trend of going after like digital payments, e-commerce payments, is not changing. And that's going to keep driving the industry for the time being. As a result, as you can imagine, payments is being one of the fastest growing and more profitable verticals within financial services, right? Not only payments are more and more one of the key contributors of revenues, for example, for banks, but actually in global markets, in capital markets, right? The market capitalization of payment-related companies has moved from being around 10% around 2010 to be 30% of the top 500 banks and payment companies, right? So it is an incredible move just in 10 years. So with all that in mind, what happens is we know that payments is an incredibly complex ecosystem. And that is the key with payments, right? There are people playing in that space across the whole value chains, in the hardware side, in networks, in issuing, in consumer wallets, right? But what we also see in payments is that it's the place where a lot of the most innovative companies have appeared. It is a place where a lot of new entrants have gathered incredible momentum, right? If you go back to this very simple view of the ecosystem that I'm putting out here, right? Companies like Stripe or Adyen or Square or even PayPal, they barely existed 20 years ago, right? Some of them didn't exist like 10 years ago. And today are massive giants that actually are incredibly influential in the space. And at the same time, you see the traditional players doing some of the most incredible work too. So fantastic place to be, a lot of things to happen. So how do we think about the future? And what are the big trends that I think are going to impact us as we go into the next decade, right? And let me quickly go through this, right? Because at the end, trying to predict the future is always hard. But I think that this digitalization of the payment flow, it is not going to slow down, right? If anything, it's going to accelerate. We already saw the big jump that happened in 2020. I think that consumers are now ready to change the slope of that growth and even demand more for people, right? There was a big argument back in the day around, oh yeah, but the older people are not ready for that change. I think that we just realized that we needed to give a good excuse, and everybody jumped on board of that trend. And with that, it's not only coming the shift away from cash, but it's also coming the emergence of new things. I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. The second thing that is connected to this, by the way, is how consumers are acting, and what consumers are expecting is different, right? We no longer have that luxury of like consumers only compare us against similar companies. Consumers are comparing the bank against other banks. Now, consumers now are comparing you with everything they do. And they're getting tired of financial services being a little slow. And so that creates a lot of opportunities for do things different, right? But if you think about car issuers, you think about networks, like they need to start thinking differently about engaging with clients. Another big question of what is going to be the end impact, but another big question is ecosystems. Who is going to embrace ecosystems and how they're going to be impacting the industry? The emergence of ecosystems is unstoppable now. And today in the US, around 12% of all retail is already happening in an ecosystem kind of model. Some external firms suggest that around 30 to 35% of all economic activity is going to happen in an ecosystem by 2030, right? Which means a lot of money is going to be moving from whatever is happening today into those new systems. And again, an ecosystem is not just by definition only a web portal, but it could be anything. Some ecosystems, I argue, will be actually owned by banks or financial institutions that want to control a vertical or be extremely prevalent in that system, right? And the last thing I want to talk about is the power of data. And the power of data is one of those things that, we've been talking about this forever. And recently we did some research in North America, and we look into how much of the data banks gather. And banks are incredibly good at gathering data. We keep asking clients about their statements and the assets they have and how much they earn, all these different things, right? So we gather a lot of data. We do incredible amount of underwriting. And the question was, we try to estimate how much of that data is actually used on a regular basis to deliver value to clients. And the number was less than 1%, which is shocking, right? Shocking that we spend hours and hours gathering data that is never used. And it's never used because, just a bunch of PDFs, we don't know what to do with them. Or it's never used because, it's in silo systems, we don't know how to connect them. Next 10 years, it's all about connecting all that data. So let me illustrate a little bit of what I said before. I don't want to go in detail into every single one of those things, but a couple of them. I talk about changing consumer behaviors, digitalization, the continued growth on digital payment systems, right? Part of what is going to happen is we're going to see new ways of paying that emerge and gain incredible momentum incredibly fast. So buy now, pay later as a category, right? It barely existed before 2017, right? And today is becoming the fastest growing payment channel, payment rate, whatever we're going to call it, right? You're going to call it financing. But the fact is, when consumers go and buy, it's becoming more and more prevalent, right? It's not just when you go and buy your Peloton that you get a chance to pay over 39 months. But it's like recently someone came to my house to just do a little bit of repairs, It's a COVID year, everybody's doing repairs in their house. And they offer exactly the same thing. That is, do you want to actually pay this over 12 months and this is becoming a thing. And by the way, credit card companies need to be thinking about this because this is taking away spend from them. Another big theme that I love to bring, because I think we should be looking at these charts and questioning a lot of the things that are happening in the industry today. Right? So this chart shows you in the left how much cash usage has dropped over the last 10 years, right? And again, 2020 accelerated a lot of this, but if you take an example starting from the bottom of Sweden, it's a country that 10 years ago, almost 60% of transactions were paying cash. And today is below 10%, right? And even a country like the US that used to be around 50% is now in the 25% mark. It bears the question, right? If by 2030, cash usage is going to be close to zero, right? Let me put a very provocative question out there. Why do we need ATMs anymore? right? And we have in an industry now where people are not going to the branches and people are not going to need ATMs, how are we pretending to engage with clients? And these are important questions we need to start thinking about today, so we are ready for them when time comes, right? Allow me to have one more page on B2b payments. And B2b payments is incredibly important because, as probably this group knows, 90% plus of all transactions are B2B payments related. And everything is happening in that space to create the foundation for a massive transformation that is going to happen over the next 10 years, right? We have real-time payments are becoming a thing. Of course, Canada and Europe are being ahead of the US on this particular metric, but even the US is catching up to real-time payments. And when real-time payments, what we're seeing in other markets already, when they come, a lot of new use cases will appear, right? We are seeing more and more the emergence of vertical solutions, right? And expanding, even financial institutions like JP Morgan, expanding beyond traditional banking to be able to own a vertical. Like that's why they acquired InstaMed, right? So now you can see what is happening in the whole hospital chain. So I can control the payment flow from the beginning till the end, right? We're seeing a big number of companies and being successful on integrating with accounts payables and accounts receivables as a fantastic way to gaining that data. That will be so helpful, right? Which connects to the next point, that is the more data you have, your ability to underwrite risk grows exponential, right? And we have great examples in that space too. And then, a lot of innovation happening in merchant services, right? And even companies that traditionally have not competed in the commercial banking space, in the B2B payment space, like Goldman Sachs, jumping now into that space with something as innovative as a transactional banking or banking as an API for this kind of companies. So I think everything is there, and we are getting ready for a big transformation in the market, as I said before, like 90% of all transactions, right? So what should be the focus? How we prepare for what is coming, right? Four big things, right? First one is we need to modernize our infrastructure, right? And together with that, we need to start rethinking our business models. But a crisis is a horrible thing to waste, and we need to be able to respond quickly. We saw it in 2020. The payment companies that had a more flexible infrastructure, right, like our great partner PayPal, they drove incredible amount of growth through that period. Right? But you need to be ready, and having the right infrastructure is critical. You need to be ready, and you need to start truly leveraging the power from the data. That's the second element piece. It's like you need to build a data infrastructure that is ready, right, to deliver true insights that help you. Underwriting is an example, but actually there is full new business models you can create by leveraging the power of data, right? Can you help your customers identify trends in the data that help them do better cash flow management? Massive value added. Nobody's doing a good job in that space yet. We need to help small businesses. We need to help merchants. They are going through all this transformation we're talking about, all this changing in consumer behaviors. It's impacting them. And if we can be there and be helpful to them, right, we're going to be able to become a much stronger firm in the future, right? And the last thing is, this is a time to innovate. This is a time to innovate. It's a time to actually be open to experiment fast, try things, get to the market, right? Because being slow or just being very conservative in this time is only going to allow, remember what I said about a lot of new entrants? It's only going to allow new entrants to keep growing at a faster pace. And any company that was in the space before needs to catch up to everything that is happening in the industry. So with that in mind, let me talk a little bit about how Google Cloud is now helping. And there is a reason why so many of these great payment companies are working with us, right? It's like what we bring to the table is an infrastructure that is incredibly flexible, right? Incredibly flexible to scale up and down in any time you want. We're bringing with all our API technology, the ability to help you connect with customers in a very simple way, right? No longer, oh, I need you send me these documents, send me these files, send me these things. No, actually, I can connect I can make it easier. You can upload things, right? We're talking about a speed, and a speed in a way that actually we never thought about this before, but like true real time. And one of the reasons that payment companies love working with Google Cloud is that the fact that you can do things in milliseconds faster, it really matters, right? Sometimes when you're talking about life insurance and you're doing a policy for 30 years, a millisecond doesn't make that much of a difference. Right? But when you're talking about fraud detection, 5 milliseconds versus 6 milliseconds makes a massive difference, right? And that's something where we have an incredible competitive advantage. And at the end, we are the data company, right? So our BigQuery capabilities, we have clients running more than 100 petabytes of data through BigQuery to do analysis, and it's not even a challenge for the systems, right? And those things are the things that really make a difference when we talk about the payment space. So this was what I wanted to talk about today. As probably everybody has seen so far, the 2020 was a year where a lot of leading companies decided to start working with us and innovating in this space. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm looking forward to meeting you soon in person, hopefully when all this is behind us.